All
All
right.
right, so here we go. We started the recording. Stefano has joined me and Nihal has joined me. Thank you both for joining me. I really do appreciate it. I don't know. I guess
Mhm.
we a lot of the other students are ill today. We usually have a couple of us on, maybe five or six of us, and it's
Uh-huh.
just me and Stefano and Nihal today. So those of you watching the recording, all cool, no problem. That's the whole point of the class. We were going to watch a video called. I'm just going to tell you about it instead of we're watching it, but I'll show you where it is. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to shift over here to share my screen so you can see what we're going to talk about because I think you're going to like this video. I highly recommend that you watch it. It's the second one here. In fact, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to play it. I'm going to play the first part here. Here we go. It's really cool. It's from it's on YouTube. I have it down here.
Welcome
Um,
to the second in this five-part series on effectuation, heuristics that expert entrepreneurs have learned in the uncertain setting of starting new ventures.
Okay, so this guy's name is Stuart Reed, and
Mhm.
he is a presenter for University of Virginia, and he the kind of heuristic that they use for teaching entrepreneurship, which was the same one that I use, is called effectuation, and the idea of effectuation is you don't you don't do the stuff that they do in most entrepreneur colleges, where you wait to do anything until you can get some money, until you can get somebody who's going to give you money, an investor or a seed round or something like that, or a bunch of professors who are going to give you a pitch contest and give you $5,000 or something. And that's a different kind of entrepreneurship than we're teaching in this class. This class is how do you get something started right now with what you have access to? So instead of sitting there and waiting for the right moment or waiting for somebody to come along and discover you, or they used to say when your ship comes in, we don't mess around with that. That's why Stefano, I gave the story of all the little businesses that I have started over the years. And Nihal, I don't know that you've ever heard. I actually went ahead and started writing a list of all the
Mhm.
businesses that I've started when I was in college and after college that I started with absolutely nothing except for just an idea and just started doing it. And these are the things that we do in this class. So I started a catering company, a
Mhm.
Beermeister cleaning company, a food and entertainment delivery company, an international chauffeur service. I told the story about that one last
Yeah.
week. A movie company. I made a movie and I screened it at the New York International Film Festival. I had a punk rock band and we played
Mhm.
all around and we turned that into like a little business. We made tapes and stuff. Um, we let's see. Uh, of course, the flight school. I got started doing the aerial photography company, and then
Mhm.
also, of course, the aerial the what do you call it? The being a spotter for the radio station. For being the producer and a traffic reporter.
Okay.
And started a software company called Rubber Mind, and then another one and I became a pro surfer. So that was actually a kind of my business. And also, I became a professional marathon swimmer. I did the 21 miles.
Oh, shit.
And then I tried to do the scuba diving thing, and we were talking about that. Me and Stefano, he was asking me about becoming a seeker in the treasure hunting company. And then I found out once I started doing that, I couldn't get life insurance if you did that. So I ended up not doing it. But all these little dumb jobs that you say to yourself, all right, well, none of them made me a multimillionaire. My
Mhm.
package manufacturing company made me a multimillionaire. My flight school, not so much, but an illionaire, not a millionaire, but an almost millionaire. So you say out of all the 12, 15 different companies I started, maybe two of them actually made me material wealth. But here's the thing. Uh, who cares? I did them all. You know what I mean? Like I made enough that I could do them. I learned from doing them. And now I'm an entrepreneurship teacher and I can tell you all these stories of the real things that I've actually done because I really did them. And I'm not making it up. And that's one of the reasons I got hired at Penn State, which, if you think about it, the extension of my flight school of being a flight teacher was being an entrepreneur and negotiation teacher at Penn State University. And, that's pretty good. That's not a bad gig. It's a pretty good gig. Anyway, so this guy, Stuart Reed, he's talking about this different
Today, I'm
companies.
here
Right.
in the
This one is a real good
recycling
friend of mine.
area at IMD to talk with you about risk, specifically the way that expert entrepreneurs handle risk. If you read newspapers and books about entrepreneurs, you're encouraged to think of entrepreneurs as swashbuckling risk takers. But the truth is a little bit different. Upside down, in fact. We will start this story with this plastic.
Okay, with the plastic. So he's going to tell the story about this guy right here. This guy's name is Kevin. He's a really good friend of mine. We talk all the time. He was a really good example of how we don't we approach risk from a different perspective than a manager would. Managers look at the upside of something and say, okay, let's see, it looks like we can make $1 million doing this. Okay. And so then they take it the other way and start saying, okay, well, how can we mitigate the risk so we don't risk too much? But they start with the upside. Guys like us, and Kevin especially, start with how much are we willing to risk? What's an affordable loss? And start with that risk and then build the upside from there. So what Kevin did, he was actually an engineer, an engineering student at Washington State or Oregon State rather, and when he graduated, he got a good job, and he started talking to his wife about this chemical process that he had been working out, where he takes plastic. He actually takes plastic, like plastic bottles, right? And he'll take the plastic, and he knows how to convert it and heat it up and turn it back into petroleum, and actually into usable petroleum. So it's pretty cool because he did this whole thing, basically starting with nothing but his idea, talking his wife into trying it, talking his friends into helping him start putting the thing together. Even the stuff like where he got his where they started working, they kind of rented it super duper cheap. And the fact they even rented a specific building that had a crane in it, so he didn't have to buy a forklift. Here's his crane. And so he started with, what can I afford to lose first? And so this is pretty cool because that's pretty much the way I've approached it. You start with, what you have at hand. You take a look at what you're willing to risk, and don't risk a single penny more. And I'll show you this in a sec here. And and from there, you try to chart out how much profit you can make. So if we take a look here, let me just look at my slides here real quick, and we'll quickly go through them. This okay, my bad.
You're
Uh,
good.
yeah, I went to the wrong side there. Okay, here we go. All right.
Quick thing, Brad. I'm just gonna quickly leave from my phone and join from my computer right now.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Fair
That's
enough.
good.
Fair enough.
All right,
Okay,
I'll be
so
back in a second.
yeah, just jump right back in. Just jump
All
right.
right, bet. Okay.
And yeah, we'll wait. So we talk about innovation, right? And innovation, what does that all mean? It doesn't mean anything unless you take into account the risk. That's what's so important about this, Stefano. When we don't think about what we have to can afford to lose, we don't really think the whole thing through. And so this is our heuristic that we use called the pain grid. Like I invented this thing, and I think Nihal will join us in just a second here. I hope he joins us in just a second. But the idea is you start with what you have access to, right? So you look at this side. Okay, what do I have access to? Oh, there he is. Okay, he just joined us. All right, Nihal, you're back with your phone and with your computer.
There we go. All right, I'm back.
Okay, you're back. Cool. So we start. This is the process that we use in this class. We start with what do you have access to? Like what are you good at? And so the whole point of the class started with this exercise where we said we're going to introduce ourselves to each other, and then we're going to actually take a look at our achievements that we've done, things that we've done in the past, and things that we've been successful at in the past, and then we're going to pitch to each other based on something that we're good at. And so that was that whole self the what they we call the personal value pitch. Okay, so that was what we actually did. In fact, I'm going to switch over here real quick. I'm going to switch over to the canvas so you can see. All right. So here's our assignment so far. We started with introduce yourself. Then we said, okay, what what are we good at? This entrepreneurship discovery, the entrepreneurial discovery. We had to actually like think about ourselves, what we were good at in high school, maybe businesses we started, maybe awards that we've won, maybe personal awards that we feel like we've won. I mean, like Stefano, you can tell me about all the places that you surfed. Right there is an accomplishment. You know, those are things you put in there. And Nihal, you've got all kinds of crazy, amazing things too. So here's the thing: we do that first, and then we turn that into this thing called the personal value pitch, where you try to put that into something that you could offer to your classmates as something that you can offer them to hire and for real money, like for real money. In fact, that's what it even says in here, like make this for real using the video tool and your entrepreneurial discovery information, the stuff that you looked up about yourself. Prepare and execute a pitch to your classmates for your services, whatever skills you enjoy using and think you have talent and value to your classmates. 1 minute, present yourself, include the description in your log line, a brief single sentence. And when you're done, check out the results of the other people. And you see, here's Rebecca and Robert, and and here's Stefanos. So Stefano, I forget what yours were. Oh, you're the organizer, right? That's right. You organize for people, and you can organize stuff.
Yeah.
That's awesome. There you go. There's Stefanos. So Nihal, feel free to do one. Like just jump right
Oh
in
yeah.
and
No,
get
this
into the
definitely seems
groove.
interesting.
Yeah, because it's super cool. It's fun,
Yeah.
and also you really then are looking at what you're good at. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to broaden out a little bit. So now we practiced our log line. The next one is going to be this thing called exploring innovation and actually chatting about Agilix, the video. So those of us watching the recording and you guys, when you have a chance, take a look at this video. And I like it. The assignment for today and the pop quiz for today, there is no pop quiz for today. It's just work on Agilix or just discuss with your peers about Agilix. Agilix is the name of the company that Kevin started. He started with his cat and his ideas and his talking to his wife and his knowledge that he had from college about how to turn plastic into petroleum. And just with that alone, he started his business. And you could say that was his risk tolerance, a way to deal with risk. He didn't like borrow money from somebody. He didn't get a credit card. He didn't like buy stuff that he didn't have money for. He only risked what he could afford to lose, and he started this business. So the next thing that happens, and this isn't due until the end, until February 24th, is this thing called exploring innovation. And this is going to be something that you think you might want to work on for the semester in this venture that we're going to work on in this class. We all do them individually, unless you want to do it with a friend. You can. You're more than welcome to. But the class is set up to do it individually. So we're going to pick a project or something that we think is really interesting that we're actually able to do. And in other words, we're not going to be entrepreneurs. We're not going to be like, I'm going to do a solar car, or I'm going to do a nuclear facility, or I'm going to rid the world of all the plastic straws. That good luck doing that by yourself. Like this has to be something that you can really actually do. It doesn't mean you have to do it. It just means it has to be realistic that you actually can do it. That's part of the grade in the paper. When I read the grades, the papers, if it's not realistic, you lose a lot of points for that. So if it's like, hey, I'm going to make a solar car or a solar airplane, it's like, okay, you got to prove to me that that's even a possibility or that it's realistic. Because if it's not, that's not what this class is. So you're going to think about something you might want to work on. Maybe start something in a business in that general area, and you're going to spend some time, 25 minutes at minimum, looking it up and answering a few questions about it. From that, we're going to turn that into a social venture that we're going to pursue for the rest of the semester, but not yet. Right now, we got to look it up, and that's how we're doing that. So, to get back to what we were just doing here, we're talking about my here it is. Okay, so get back to this whole idea. If you wanted to start a computer company, for instance, um, this might be your computer. This might be all you can build at this stage of the game, and that's fine because that's pretty realistic. You and 3 or 4 of your friends could actually do this. In fact, this was the first computer, really the first NASA computer in 1960. Was six guys and some chalk, and that's how they figured it out. Anyway, this whole thing called effectuation, it's based on 6 principles or 5 principles. The first one is called the bird in hand principle, which means instead of waiting around for something magical to happen, go out and start with what you actually have. If you have lemons and you have a pitcher and you have sugar and you have water, start selling lemonade. Okay. Don't wait for a perfect opportunity. Just start taking action based on what you have readily available to you, who you are, what you know, who you know. In fact, start with who you are and what you know and who you know. Don't get like preset goals in your mind. And then evaluate those opportunities based on whether the downside is acceptable. Okay. Rather than on the attractiveness of the predicted upside, uh, you're going to invest what you can afford to lose, and hopefully that's zero. Okay, hopefully it's you're doing stuff. Now, last week, Nihal, we watched a video, and Stefano, I don't know if you had a chance to see it on Freitag. Freitag was a company that started two guys. They were brothers. They lived in Switzerland, and they were bike messengers. And they hated imagine the worst job you can think of in the world, right? Being a bike messenger in Switzerland in the wintertime. I mean, talk about suck. Talk about cold. And unfortunately, the bags they had sucked because they let water in. And so they'd be delivering a letter and the thing's soggy when they get there. So they got there in their mind. They saw trucks around that had these tarps. And when a truck used a tarp like once or twice, then they throw them away. And they're like, there's like truck tarps that are garbage that are thrown in the garbage that are the most resilient anti-weather material you could possibly imagine. They put them on trucks, for God's sakes. And so these guys got the trash and they borrowed their mom's sewing machine and their mom's washing machine, and they were already bike messengers, so they used the inner tubes from their bikes, used inner tubes, and they stitched them together and they made carrying bags out of these things so that they were totally weatherproof, and they used them and then they sold them to other bike messengers, and then from other bike messengers they sold them to people that saw them and thought they looked cool, and they turned that into a major corporation. It's called Freitag. Well, Agilix is kind of the same story, right? This guy turned it into Agilix, which is a major corporation. I mean, Kevin's a really good friend of mine, just by thinking, hey, look at this garbage that I can turn into something. So he didn't risk anything that he couldn't afford to lose. So we start with a problem, right? But we look at what do we have, and then what can we actually risk? What are we willing to call an acceptable loss? Then how what you have fixes these problems. That's your demand. Who you're doing it for is the customer, and how you can explain it to everybody in one sentence is called your log line. Now, interesting. Nihal, I don't know if you were asking me. I think somebody in our class was actually asking me questions here. They were in, I think, 425, and the teacher was asking them to read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which is a pretty good book, but not my favorite. I'm more of a Dave Ramsey fan. Like I like Total Money Makeover, and I had a student actually send me an email and say, "Hey, just curious, what's your opinion of Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad?" I picked one up to compare it to the Total Money Makeover. And this is particularly germane to what we're talking about right now because both of them approach risk completely differently. And this is what I wrote back. I wrote this email back. I said, "Hey, in a nutshell, the difference mostly has to do with risk tolerance and risk aversion. Risk is important that you understand this when you think this through. There's two sides to risk. One side is its likelihood, but its other side is its magnitude. So, in other words, the likelihood of something bad happening. So, I fly airplanes, right? And I'm teaching people how to do airplane flying, and I know what I'm doing. I've got years and years of experience, and I took aerobatic classes, from the best. So I know what I'm doing, and I feel very confident in it. And I also got trained by two of the test pilots when they built my plane. Like they were the test pilots that built the plane, and they taught me how to fly it. So I feel pretty confident I know what I'm doing. So, what's the likelihood that I'm going to crash when I'm doing aerobatics? It's pretty slim, okay, because I know what I'm doing. What's the magnitude? I mean, I'm totally effed, right? I mean, if the wings fall off while I'm doing it, I'm dead. That's it. Total end of day. So you have to look at those two things side by side. Now you could go you now if I didn't know what I was doing, right? And there are lots of people that see what I'm doing, the aerobatics in this plane, and they're like, "You're crazy. I wouldn't do that." It's because they don't know how to do it, right? They don't know what they're doing. So they would be terrified. The possibility of something going wrong for them is reasonably high. And the magnitude of something, as we've already discussed, is exactly the same. You end up as a smoking hole in the ground and dead. So let's take that, let's walk that back to like DoorDash, right? So I do DoorDash with my wife. My wife and I, that's our favorite hobby is to go and do DoorDash. So we're driving around, dropping off deliveries, and my wife has a lot of fun doing it, and I have a lot of fun doing it. And we make a couple bucks on the side, which is great. But if you think about it, what's the likelihood of having a car wreck? Well, I'm a professional driver. I've taken driving courses. I've been driving my whole life. I'm extra careful. It's not that likely. What happens if you get in a car wreck? What's the magnitude? Well, it could be any level. It could be, if you're driving on, North Atherton in College and Beaver, you're going 20 miles an hour. What's going to happen? I mean, it is possible. There is a very, very small likelihood that you could, kill somebody, run somebody over, or crash head on with somebody and actually really get killed. But it's really unlikely if you're extra careful and you're extra protective. And most of the accidents that would happen on those kinds of roads, they're fender benders, right? I mean, you get a speeding ticket, you bump into another car on this fender or whatever. So you see how you have to consider the risk. So here's the thing. In Kiyosaki, he discards both. He figures bad stuff's never going to happen to me. He actually says in the book, bad stuff's probably not going to happen to me. You can't even think about it, like a stock market crash or a loss of your job or whatever. And if it does, it won't be a big deal. I'll just figure it out. That's what Rich Dad Poor Dad says. Okay. I don't agree with that. I've had bad shit happen to me already. Okay. I've lost jobs. I lived through the 2008 market crash. I lived through the 1998 market crash. I lived through the 1989 market crash. Market crashes happen. Now, Dave Ramsey, he's got the slow and sure wins the race approach, which has definitely been proved by the test of time for me personally. Okay. I have no debt. I have no credit cards. I have no mortgage. I have no car payment. I have no airplane payment. I have zero. My credit rating is zero. We bought our house with a 20% down and a zero credit rating. Okay. So you don't need a credit rating. What you need is you go slow and sure and win the race. So, uh, bad stuff has and is happening not now. I mean, the Bidenomics is still kicking our ass. We're still trying to figure our way back to that. Interest rates and mass layoffs, we've seen lots of that. And because of the Ramsey approach, I have no risk because I have no debt. You see? So I like Ramsey better. That's me. And in fact, this comes right from Ramsey. He says, look, debt magnifies your mistakes. If you're getting debt and you screw up, and he says, you know what? You know what sucks more than a failed business deal or an idea? Making payments on a failed attempt for months after it tanks. That's why you operate at the speed of cash. That's me personally. I recommend that. That's how I do business. If I can't cash flow it, I don't do it. Period. End of story. So that brings us back to that whole risk aversion thing. Now, the next thing that happens is we start thinking about those log lines that we did that fun thing with the movies. Now we're going to do the thing, we're going to use that log line thing for our businesses. I'm going to do blank by blanking the problem with my blank for these blank who are my customers. That is our pain grid. That is literally the pain grid. Now let's look at Agilix, okay? So Agilix, the problem is, hey, you know what? People need oil. People have to buy oil. It's not going away anytime real soon. Okay, maybe in the future we'll have solar, wind driven, nuclear, everything. But for right now, all that alternative stuff is what 1.6% of the GDP's actual need for energy. So we need oil, right? Plastic is trash, and nobody likes trash. Nobody likes trash on their beach. Nobody likes trash floating around the ocean. Nobody likes trash in the landfill. So what about this? What if I could figure out how to take plastic trash and turn it into oil? So I'm reusing a resource that already exists. That's what he was thinking in his mind. You need oil, and the problem is it's hard to get oil, and everybody complains that, oh, you're going to deplete the Earth's surface. What if you use stuff that already exists and reuse it? Now, what are the things that he have access to? Well, number one, he's got a chemistry degree. Okay. He thought about that through college. He had work in the field. He had his living room. He had his wife's support. He had a cat for companionship. He had spare time. And he knows that there's a need for cheaper oil, and especially at the fleet level. And that's what he thought. Here I am right next to a college that has fleet vehicles. So I don't know if you've ever seen Penn State's fleet vehicles, but they have fleet vehicles, right? So they have the lawn mowing machines, they have the snow blowing machines, they have the police machines, they have the construction vehicle, and they all have that blue license plate and says Penn State on it. Penn State owns them all. So if they could figure out a way to purchase like oil and gasoline just for them, just from a one vendor at an inexpensive price, and also be able to brag that they were helping to recycle the world, hey, they'd be on that like, you know, flies on poop. And guess what? That's what this guy, my friend Kevin, he figured at Oregon State, he's like, they're the same thing. By the way, he's now working with Penn State. I put him in touch with people here at Penn State. So here's the thing. The demand, we can empty the landfills and we can make the oil. And who will we do it for? Well, first of all, the people who throw away the trash, they have to buy in. Okay. Second, small to medium fleet companies, they could definitely use this and save money. And guess what? Also, I put him in touch with aviation companies because he could make specific oil for a small universe market like aviation 100 low lead fuel. So, what is his log line? Trash to black treasure. Repurpose waste plastic before they are discarded into landfills. That is what he is doing. Pretty cool, don't you think? And my question is, why have you ever heard of him? Either one of you? And why not? You would think people would be jumping up and down talking about him like it was nothing. Now look, see this guy? Who's this guy? You know who this guy is? Recognize this guy? I'll give you a hint. The name of his company is on the side of the wall. That's the richest guy in the world, guys. That's the richest guy in the world. Did he start in an elaborate office with towers? This is how he started. He started with an upside down ping pong table, a computer. He didn't even bother wasting money on pens. He used spray paint to come up with the Amazon logo. And you look at this, like, hey, look, when you look at like, I've heard people talk about MVPs, minimum viable products and stuff like that, and getting funding and stuff like that to come up with a good minimum viable product. I'm here to say you don't need it. You don't need funding for that. Why did Jeff Bezos start with books? Because his minimum viable product was cheap, easy to mail, and not very heavy. That's why he used books. That's all when Amazon started. That's all. When he was doing this, the only thing Jeff Bezos sold on the internet was books. Why? They stack easily. They mail easily. Super simple. His network, when he started, he was the boss, and his wife, same as Kevin. His business plan. He wrote his business plan on a trip to leave his old job in New York to his new place where he was going to be working in his parents' garage in Washington State. And you know what's interesting? Think about this class. The whole point of this class is to write a business plan. That's what we're doing, a feasibility study. It's a business plan that says, should I do this or should I not do this? That's it. His initial investment was himself. That's it. Start within your means. And he knew if you listen to Jeff Bezos, we'll listen to Jeff Bezos. I bootlegged a couple of videos of Jeff Bezos that you'll enjoy watching in a couple of weeks, where he actually tells you straight out he was 100% sure he was going to fail. So he didn't want to risk anything he didn't want to lose. What does that tell you? Freitag, same thing. These two guys, the bike messengers, they use trash, they use tires, the inner tubes, seat belts, truck tarps. They only used the stuff they had access to. Their parents, their clients were their fellow bike messengers. They used a sewing machine at their parents' house, the bathtub at the parents' house, used containers at the parents' house. And so the chapter that we're reading right now, this next chapter in the book, chapter 7, it's called The Art of Innovation. And I'm here to tell you that risk and innovation, I think they're the same thing. I think they go hand in hand. If you're not what do they say? Necessity is the mother of invention, right? If you need to do something, that's when you come up with something clever to come up with a way of doing it. And if you won't allow yourself to risk anything, then you're going to be very, very, very clever. To create innovative, adaptive organizations, you have to be open-minded. You've got to realize where you are in a life cycle and understand a little bit about an industry. We'll get into that next. But in the acceptance curve, don't think that like you have to be like you remember our two guys that we talked about, Joseph Schumpeter and Kerzner, and we said Schumpeter says you have to be over here. You've got to be an innovator. You got to be the first people. Kerzner says it doesn't matter where you are, and this is what's so cool. Who's the biggest group of people? Early majority and late majority. That's the biggest group of people. So you don't need to come up with something brand spanking new. Don't do that. Take something somebody's already doing and innovate on it, because the group that's relatively content with the status quo is the late majority, which means they are the largest group. Also, when you establish new ways of doing something, that's the best way to do it, because you don't have to educate people. Is innovation is solely about generating new ideas? No way, absolutely not. Um, Disruptive innovations usually even go unnoticed by mainstream organizations until it's way too late, because they're not going to risk anything like that. Liabilities of newness is risk and uncertainty and switching costs. These are all big things. Information gaps, huge. Nihal, in case you're wondering, I'm actually giving the students the answers to the quiz questions. That's what we're doing here. So that's why the book, I've actually yellowed the book, the thing that's the right answer. And so this is actually chapter 7. Uh,
Okay.
this thing called founder syndrome is a big thing. That's when you get a founder that beats you down. Uh, and sometimes you get a rare genius that's the founder. Sometimes it's a person with limited purpose. Sometimes it's a startup situation. The one thing you definitely don't need is some big bully telling you you can't think outside of the box. In fact, it sells us here. The last thing you need is a strong founder who discourages disruptive thinking. But going back to the video, okay, and I said managers oftentimes think completely differently than entrepreneurs. A manager is going to think how much return do we need to get? Okay, what's the upside? Then they try to reduce risk. Whereas true entrepreneurs, they're afraid if they screw up, they're going to end up having to live in their parents' basement, right? So we're going to start with an acceptable amount of risk. Then we're going to figure out to push creatively to increase the return that way. So if you see them side by side, and this is actually in the effectuation video, like he actually shows us and kind of explains it a little bit more. Side by side, who do you think is more risk tolerant? The manager who can lose tons of money for a company, or the entrepreneur who's going to lose his house? Obviously, it's the entrepreneur. So the next thing we're doing is this thing called a startup network. Now, this thing is not, I don't want you to hand it in. Okay. This is not something you're going to hand in, but while you're actually looking at your entrepreneur idea, okay, about what's actually out there in the real world, I want you to do the same thing with the people that you know. I want you to identify what we'll call startup network people. They used to call them stakeholders, but unfortunately, that word has been perverted over time. It's been politicized. What we want to call it now is startup network. I don't care what the hell you call it. It's just all the people that you know. Who do you know that is in your personal network that knows you personally that would help you personally? So if you had a flat tire, are there any people that you know that you could call that would come and fix for your tire or come and pick you up right now? People that are in this area. Are there any people that you know that would, if they thought you were doing something really cool, would tell all their friends and family about what you were doing? Are there people that you know that if you were making something that they could use, they would buy it from you in a second? Who are these people? Maybe your boss, maybe people that are coworkers, maybe people that you do things with, activity sharers that you do play tennis with, or you surf with, or whatever. What I want you to do is I want you to take all the people that you know that you can think of that you can fit into this grid. Where are they people that are high power and or high interest in your life? So in other words, your parents might be people that help pay your rent, and they also might be very interested in what you're doing in college. And if they realize that you're doing something that they don't like, they may give you a hard time. And they may even do something like tell you, hey, you got to come home. We're not paying for college anymore. Those would be people that are high power because they could change your life, and also high interest because they really do give a shit about what you're doing and are totally willing to like shut you down if they think you're doing it wrong. Like the ones that if you call them up and say, you know what, mom and dad, I'm going to become a drug dealer now. They're like, what? What? You're on the next boat home. Get your ass back here. Right now, I'm not paying for college anymore. So those are people you need to manage closely. But now there's other people, like maybe who have high power, but don't really give a crap about who you are, what you're doing, like your power company. The people at the power company don't care what you're doing with the power. As long as you pay the bill, they can shut you off immediately and you could be sitting there doing nothing. So they have high power, but they don't really give a crap about what you're doing. And then there's people who have high interest who also have really no ability to help you right now. They might in the future. And they might know people that can help you in the future, maybe like your Aunt Sally or your Uncle Ted. They know what you're doing, or maybe your roommate, or maybe somebody who's in your fraternity with you that you're friends with, who's like, wow, dude, I like what you're doing. It's cool stuff. But they don't have any money. They can't get you going. They can't help you get started. They don't purchase the thing that you do. It's not something of interest to them. And then there's the group that are low. They have low power, low interest. They don't really care what you're doing, and they don't have any power if you were doing anything that was worthwhile. So what you're going to do is you're going to start organizing and get used to this skill of organizing the people that you know and put them into this bracket, one of these brackets. And we're going to call them startup network because even though they may not be able to help you right now, when we get closer and we start working more on our businesses in this class, they may have more interest in that. And that is the thing that's going to end up in your feasibility paper. So let me make this really clear. Everybody watching this recording, I expect to see your startup network for your business in your feasibility paper. It is very important. High power, interested people, high power, less interested people, low power, interested people, and low power, less interested people. That is what we're looking for. Print this, fill it out in crayon. Do not hand it in. All right, our pop attendance quiz for tonight. Are you ready? Our pop attendance quiz is that there is no pop attendance quiz. In fact, instead, I just want you to write that down. There is no pop attendance quiz. Instead, work on the Agilix discussion. That's what that is. The next chapter is chapter 6, where we get even more into risk. So we look at innovation from the perspective of risk, and then we look at the risk from the perspective of risk. And we look at them side by side. And by the way, I want to mention this in case you don't know how Airbnb got started. They did the same exact thing. They did not risk going, well, they couldn't get anybody to invest in them. Nobody wanted to invest in them because they thought they were insane. They thought they were going to get their asses sued off of them. And so did they start by doing bed and breakfast? No. They got cereal. Here, read this at your convenience, okay? Go ahead and put this in there. How Airbnb sold $30,000 in Obama McCain IPO cereal in early funding days. How they got started. Okay, that's how you want to know. All right, I'm stopping the share here. And okay, so those of you watching the recording, watch the Agilix video and discuss it. Okay, so that's what I want for that's the pop attendance quiz. It's just write that in there. There is no pop quiz. Instead, discuss Agilix. Okay, so I'm going to turn off the recording and email me if you have any questions.